Hey, Mr. Neeson, I'm going to do a brief presentation on my paper, my juvenile delinquency paper. My first page was on juvenile delinquency, of course, the definition of it. The term juvenile delinquency has to deal with minors between the age of 10 and 18. Children who violate criminal law that are between the ages of 10 and 18 are to be considered juvenile delinquents. The term delinquent is defined as failing in or neglectful of a duty or obligation. It is every citizen's obligation to follow the rule of law, and therefore the term juvenile delinquent came to be known. There are a whole range of crimes you can do to be labeled juvenile delinquent. Shoplifting to armed robbery can all be filed under juvenile delinquency. Of course, with the ultimate crime of murder, children can be sent to adult courts to be held accountable for their actions. There are also two types of delinquent acts that are usually seen. The first type of delinquent act is that would be a crime if they were adult. The second one are commonly called status offenses. These are crimes that are only crimes because of the offender's age. You have a very little chance of beating a status offense because there is very little discretion people can use. In the 1980s, juvenile delinquents were viewed as bad actors rather than as sick individuals, and delinquency was viewed as elimination of rational decision. Was viewed as the culmination of a rational decision-making process. Most of the problems occur with children during a phase called adolescence, which is the life interval between childhood and adulthood. It is known that people making this transition will almost eventually make dumb decisions. The next page is major cause of juvenile delinquency. There are many different players when it comes to the problem of juvenile delinquency. One major factor that I would argue for is that poor parenting plays a big factor in a child becoming delinquent. Parents who don't know how to handle their children often neglect their children, not giving your child the proper love and care that every child must have as a fast track to that child getting into trouble. Parents who don't give their children the proper level of supervision is also a big problem. Children who know that they are not being watched will always act different and have a better chance of getting into trouble. Parents who beat their children can also mess with a child's life in a way that the abuse stays with the child and shapes how they see the world. If violence is normal for a kid, that kid will have no problem inflicting violence upon someone if in his mind the situation calls for it. Sexual abuse goes along the same route. The environment a child grows up in is a major cause of juvenile delinquency. If you have a kid who doesn't know if he's going to eat today, then he will seek means to get what he needs to survive. If you put under pressure anybody, man or child, will do what he or she needs to do in order to survive. If selling drugs is the only way of getting out of the ghetto, then you're going to sell drugs. If you're surrounded by a bunch of delinquents that are always up to no good, and always getting into trouble, then you will have a pretty good chance in getting caught up into trouble. Next page is public school and juvenile delinquency and what role it plays. The public system has a huge role in the detection and prevention of juvenile delinquents. Most children nowadays are forced by law to attend school. That means that school is where most children will be socialized and groomed into becoming a young adult. Not only are there problems with being socialized at a young age among kids that might not be able to handle different people, let alone different situations, there are a huge chunk of kids going to public schools during their adolescence, which is usually the toughest time of a kid growing up. Kids are growing up, hitting puberty, and asking all types of questions about who they are and what type of person they want to be. During this time of their lives, they are ripe for being influenced by people, especially by their own peers. You grow away from your parents and start caring about your friends more and what they do and think. This is where public schools come in, because this is where these people, that is where you see the people every day and interact with them. It is imperative that public schools take a proactive stance against crime and any criminal behavior. They are a place that our children spend the most time at other than their homes, and must be used as places to identify potential problems with a child's attitude or disposition. Hold on, let me. Teachers see these children only on a daily basis and should be able to discern whether this or that kid will need attention. If you see that a child is being unruly in class and might be a problem child, then some sort of effort should be made to take that child and change his or her ways. The effort can come in the form of anger management and having one-on-one with the child talk about his or her behavior. My next page is problem areas that have influence upon juvenile delinquency. There are several different problem areas that influence juvenile delinquency between peers, parents, and school. One of the problem areas that have influence with juveniles with parents and the juveniles. One of the problem areas that have influence with juveniles with parents is the juvenile's friends. Friends have massive influence over a child's life, in some cases even more over a parent. During the adolescence, teens want to separate from their parents and experience life with their friends, which can be awesome but also have its downfalls. Having bad friends can be a fast track to being a delinquent. Parents must be familiar with who their kids hang out with. Another problem area with peers is that kids must decide what side they're going to take on committing crime. If a child is on the right path but has friends that are maybe in gangs or find themselves in trouble a lot, he or she must make a decision as to whether they should cut connection with that friend or accept the risk of getting in trouble with that person. More problem areas occur with school as well. Gangs can have a horrible impact on schools. Gang members from different gangs can conflict within schools that really don't need to be there. Imagine going to school trying to get ahead in life and better yourself, only to be involved in a gang shootout on public grounds or on school grounds. Social media in today's world also has a negative influence on juveniles. If a child gets into trouble with the law, it will almost certainly be talked about publicly on social media websites. Rumors by word of mouth were bad enough, but by the power of social media, some kids' bad decision can be magnified 100-fold by their peers or even adults that should know better. My next page is proceedings of juvenile court system. Juvenile court proceedings are usually focused on the rehabilitation of the offender, seeing as how the offender is at an age where his or her mind can be greatly influenced. Firstly, the juvenile criminal system is different from the adult system, as the offender is detained and not arrested like an adult would. Next, a petition is drawn up which outlines the jurisdiction authority of the juvenile court over the offense and detained individuals, gives notice for the reason of the court appearance, serves as notice to the minor's family, and also an official charging document. Once the case has hit the courtroom, the case is adjudicated, which means a formal judgment or decision about a problem is made. Next, a disposition is given, which is the court's final determination of the case or issue. Juvenile records are also different from adult records. Adult records can be looked up and accessed because of the Freedom of Information Act. Juvenile records cannot be looked up because of their age. The rationale behind this is that one stupid mistake should not follow a child throughout their whole entire life. Also, a juvenile can have the records expunged upon his or her 18th birthday, provided the juvenile has met his or her conditions such as good behavior or community service. The court has a duty to serve the least detrimental punishment to a juvenile due to the parens patri concept. Parens patri is Latin for parent of his or her country. This concept means that the state has the power to act as guardian for those who are unable to care for themselves, such as a child or disabled individuals. Next one is juvenile incarceration, the benefits and the cons and the advantages and disadvantages. There are many advantages and disadvantages to juvenile incarceration. It is known fact that the U.S. has the most incarcerated population of adults in the whole world. It must also be stated that we also have the largest population of juveniles behind bars as well. Approximately around 500,000 juveniles are incarcerated in juvenile detention centers every year. Those numbers alone should raise questions as to whether incarcerating juveniles is a good idea. One big disadvantage of juvenile incarceration is the effect it has on the chance of graduating high school. A paper called Juvenile Incarceration, Human Capital, and Future Crime Evidence from Randomly Assigned Judges by Anna Iser concluded that juvenile incarceration decreases the chance of high school graduation by 13 to 39 percentage points and increases the chance of incarceration as an adult by 23 to 41 percentage points as compared to the average public school student in the same area. Another disadvantage of juvenile incarceration is that when you lock up a child, you are exposing him or her to a more adult-like institution of justice. You expose these kids to harsh conditions to keep them away from their family that they're most likely the most comfortable with. It is documented that the onset of depression, suicidal thoughts, and mental health issues occurred after youth began their incarceration. This surely is not conducive to rehabilitating youth. One of the benefits of juvenile incarceration is that the government is able to have a troubled youth out of a bad situation. Everybody knows that you can't pick your parents, therefore, if you maybe have abusive parents, which are the reason you're getting into trouble, you can find almost a place to relax and clear your mind in a place like a juvenile detention center. Your parents may not be looking out for your best interests, but it's the state's job to do so. Now, my last one is with juvenile rehabilitation programs. Luckily, there are more options. The state has to deal with juveniles than locking them up. There are a wide variety of rehabilitation programs for youth offenders. I've highlighted one. Youth are given treatment interventions that include being placed in juvenile treatment programs, group therapy, and individual counseling / therapy. The number, intensity, and type of interventions for each youth is based upon their level of risk to reoffend and assess criminogenic mental health, educational, vocational, and aftercare needs. One of the programs listed is a program called the Stay Sharp Substance Abuse Education Program. That's the one I've highlighted. S stands for seeking motivation. The child must look for motivation and discuss the use of alcohol and drugs. The H stands for how I got here. The child must read other stories about kids using drugs and must examine why he or she chooses to use drugs. It is a very deep and soul-searching stage of in the program. The A stands for abuse or addiction. Youth learn the facts and destroy the myths behind abuse of addiction. They look at the general process or stages of abuse and addiction, examine their own individual stages. Youth learn how the benefits lessen and the consequences increase as they move down through the stages. Youth also receive detailed drug education about alcohol and substance abuse, chemical dependency, and addiction. The R stands for ready for change. The child learns that motivation is key if you want to change your path in life, and will examine reasons why it's worth changing. The P stands for planning for the future. The child learns that those who are not prepared to win are prepared to lose. They must prepare a plan of action and adhere by it to succeed in life. There are also programs to help children with anger problems, such as the anger replacement therapy. ART is a cognitive behavior multi-model curriculum comprised of 3 components: structured learning, training, anger control training, and moral reasoning. This program provides the youth with the means to learn self-control when their anger is aroused. Each step teaches the youth to reduce their anger and substitute pro-social behaviors. The anger cycle is taught in steps, beginning with triggers, cues, anger reducers, reminders, and self-evaluation. There are several programs to help out today's youth to get on the right path and turn over a new leaf. And that was my presentation. Thank you very much.